So the first senior official has been removed from Trump's inner circle during this administration. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out, kind of, being moved over. He's now being nominated as the ambassador to the United Nations, which is a step down. That's how that works. But nonetheless, he is still a part of the team. Now, the reason why kind of depends who you ask at this point. We're getting very different versions of events and who's responsible for all of this, to include a podcaster, Laura Loomer. More on that here in a minute. But the reason this is important, and not just some random personnel moves inside of the government, is the National Security Advisor is obviously a very important role in our overall national security team. And right now, as we report this, we have India and Pakistan on the verge of war. The U.S. is conducting kinetic strikes against the Houthis daily and has been for more than a month. Russia and Ukraine is nowhere near ending. Israel is still going after Hamas in Gaza. The fighting in Syria just picked back up a couple days ago. And yesterday, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth threatened to start bombing Iran. So with all of that, you want a competent, robust, cohesive national security apparatus in place, and any gaps is a problem. Doesn't matter how you feel about the individuals, the administration, the goals. We want a very well-staffed national security team, and with National Security Advisor Waltz stepping out, there's going to be a shortage at least for a period of time. Now, it sounds like Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be dual-hatting, quad-hatting, actually, filling 4 different roles now in the interim. And that's coming from a statement that made this public from President Trump. He said, quote, "I am pleased to announce that I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations. From his time in uniform on the battlefield, in Congress, and as my national security advisor, Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. I know he will do the same in his new role. In the interim, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as national security advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Together, we will continue to fight tirelessly to make America and the world safe again. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Now, we talked about in a video earlier today, Steve Witkoff, covering down on 2 or 3 of the largest issues going on around the world today. And I said that's a problem from my perspective, because that means none of those things can get his full attention. And I would echo the same here. However you feel about Marco Rubio or Waltz or anyone else, or the priorities or anything, it's a challenge when one person has to do more than one job at this level. And right now, Rubio is the Secretary of State, obviously. Now the National Security Advisor. He also is the head of USAID and the head of like the State Department archives or something. Anyways, at least 4 roles that Rubio is covering down on right now. Now, turning to some reactions or explanations, starting with the New York Times. You can expect this to be coming from the left side of the aisle. They say Mr. Waltz has been on thin ice as National Security Advisor for months, but his position became more precarious after it became public that he organized a group chat on the commercial messaging app Signal to discuss a sensitive military operation in Yemen, and accidentally included a journalist in the conversation. Most of Mr. Trump's advisors had already viewed him as too hawkish to work for a president who campaigned as a skeptic of American intervention and eager to reach a nuclear deal with Iran and normalize relations with Russia. Mr. Waltz's deputy, Alex Wong, who worked on North Korean issues in Mr. Trump's first term and who is considered a more moderate Republican with substantial national security experience, is also expected to be removed. Then turning over to The Atlantic, again, this is generally going to be coming from the left side of the aisle. I want to get into this one because I feel like it provides a little more detail into kind of the direction this is going around Laura Loomer, the person who it seems like right now may be responsible for some of these firings in the National Security Council. The Atlantic says the origin of Waltz's offenses, according to people familiar with Trump's thinking, predated the Signal chat. He didn't work well with other senior members of Trump's team, they said, and couldn't prove to the president that he was able to manage his own staff. This account of Trump's decision to shake up his national security team is based on interviews with 14 current and former White House officials and outside advisors, all speaking, of course, on the condition of anonymity. They say in April, Trump ordered the dismissal of numerous NSC officials based on the advice of Laura Loomer. April, sorry, got mixed up with the dates there. The far-right activist who rose to prominence by making incendiary anti-Muslim claims and who last year shared a video labeled that 9/11, the September 11th attacks, was an inside job. In an Oval Office meeting with Trump, Loomer accused senior members of Waltz's staff of disloyalty. Waltz, who has an office in the West Wing, was not present for the start of the meeting. And this is where it starts to get a little challenging to provide like a coherent analysis of what we're seeing when you have an outsider, if you will, a podcaster, YouTuber, content creator, one talking about 9/11 being an inside job, nonetheless. getting the president's ear, resulting in the firing of senior officials, it's hard to explain the rationale then of what the offense was, if you will, because you end up going down these rabbit holes. I'm not super interested in doing this. These rabbit holes of trying to get inside Laura Loomer's head and what she's thinking and how she views these people. And we're going to dabble in that in a minute because I think it's important, but just very briefly. So shifting over to the right side of the aisle here from Breitbart, seeing how they're covering this, they essentially just kind of focus on the fact that Waltz is being nominated. So not very much about his removal, more about his being nominated to a new position. They say President Donald Trump is nominating National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to be a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will take on the responsibilities of National Security Advisor in the meantime, while also leading the State Department. Trump announced the shakeups in a Truth Social post Thursday afternoon. Scrutiny surrounded Waltz in March after he created a signal group chat among other senior cabinet officials about Houthi strikes, in which editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg of the left-wing Atlantic was inadvertently added to. So that's my bad. Earlier I said the Atlantic was left-leaning. They call it left-wing. I don't know. Parsing words there. Nonetheless, that's generally how it's being reported in the more right-leaning outlets, that it's just a move for Waltz. He's just moving along, moving into a new position. Again, big picture, the move from National Security Advisor to UN Ambassador is a step down. There's no two ways about it. That's stepping further outside of the president's circle, less influence, less authority, and so on. Now, Politico here had an interesting piece that I have a hard time with some of these, deciding, like, are they left, are they right, is it just information worth knowing? I'm going with the latter on this one. I feel like Politico put out some pieces here that are important to kind of understand what's happening. Waltz has been further weakened after far-right activist Laura Loomer met with Trump and persuaded him to fire several members of the National Security Council and top officials, including the director of the National Security Agency, over loyalty concerns. Loomer also targeted Waltz's deputy Wong, accusing the son of Chinese immigrants of advancing Chinese interests. Politico said they reached out to Waltz, or they reached out to Loomer over all of this, and she responded with one word: Loomered. In a sign he was unable to gain influence, Waltz struggled to place people in top roles in the National Security Council. Many key posts remain empty after other members of the White House blocked his choices for key senior director positions on strategy, nuclear and strategic issues, and African affairs. They say his picks were viewed by hardline MAGA appointees as too establishment, and 3 of his picks in the case of Africa were rejected in a row. That post still today remains unfilled. Now, shifting over to Laura Loomer here briefly, it looks like she posted, kind of in response to this earlier today, scalp, like suggesting, I did it, we got one, knocked one off the list, maybe is a way to look at it. And then digging into some of these past posts she had made, talking about some issues she had with, it was hard to find anything with Waltz, but with Wong, maybe. She said National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, along with his Chinese Deputy National Security Advisor Alex Wong, have resigned from the Trump administration today. Hopefully the rest of the people depart who were set to be fired but were given promotions under Waltz, and they also depart. When looking back at her frustrations with Wong, she keeps referring to he and his wife as being Chinese, and then of being Democrats or working under previous Republicans that were not in line with Trump's agenda. So it's hard to figure out, like, again, I started down that route. You know what? I'll link it below. If you want to dig into that, go for it. I had a hard time kind of deciphering the hatred for Alex Wong. I don't really understand where it came from. Nonetheless, the response here that we have from Waltz is he put out a statement saying, quote, "I'm deeply honored to continue my service to President Trump and our great nation." And that's about where it sits today. So again, big picture, Waltz out as National Security Advisor, set to be nominated for the post of Ambassador to the United Nations. Secretary Rubio taking over the role of National Security Advisor, and we'll see where it goes from there. That's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.